Marcus Bennett woke up before dawn, his heart light with the thought of finally going home. He had spent a week with his best friend, exploring art galleries and biking through quiet neighborhoods. Now he was eager to see his parents share his stories and sleep in his own bed again. He had packed his backpack neatly the night before, a sketchbook filled with new drawings, his favorite headphones, and a water bottle. His mother drove him to the airport under a sky still painted in soft pink and blue. They hugged tightly at the curb. Marcus smiled and waved, then stepped inside the terminal feeling grown up and confident. He walked through the sliding doors into the busy airport lobby, full of people wheeling suitcases and rolling strollers. Signs pointed the way to security, gates, and baggage claim. Marcus followed the crowd, heading for Skyward Air's check-in desk. He showed his boarding pass to the agent, who scanned it and handed it back with a polite smile. "Gate C12, she said. Marcus thanked her, slung his backpack over one shoulder, and headed toward the security line. At the security checkpoint, he placed his backpack, jacket, and shoes into plastic bins. A guard waved him through the metal detector. His bag came out the other side, and he picked it up without a second thought. He slipped on his shoes, picked up his things, and moved past the checkpoint to the gate area. His flight had not yet started boarding, so he found a seat by a window and pulled out his sketchbook. He sketched a quick image of the airport scene. Travelers reading books, families chatting, and a little plane drawn on a poster above him. Marcus checked the time on his phone. There were still 20 minutes before boarding. He put away his sketchbook and drank some water. He closed his eyes for a moment, enjoying the hum of the airport. People talked all around him, some in pairs. Some on phones. A child giggled nearby. It was a calm, normal morning. He felt glad to be here. Soon, the gate agent's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. "Now boarding Skyward Air Flight 427 to Chicago. Group 1, please line up." Marcus checked his boarding pass. He was in Group 3. Other passengers moved forward, waited patiently, then joined the line when his group was called. His backpack rested comfortably at his side. He stepped onto the jet bridge and saw the flight attendant smiling. "Hello," she said. "Let me see your boarding pass." Marcus handed it over. She scanned it and gave it back. "Row 14, she said. "Straight ahead, then to your left." He thanked her and walked down the aisle, counting the rows. "I found seat 1-4A by the window." He lifted his backpack up to the overhead bin and tucked it in. On his seatbelt and took out his phone. He sent a quick text to his sister. "On my way home. See you soon." He looked around. The cabin filled slowly. Some passengers chatted with seatmates. Others read or watched shows on their devices. A young mother strapped her toddler into a car seat in the row behind him. The toddler looked around with big eyes, curious about the cabin lights and the hum of the engines. Marcus offered a friendly smile. The little boy waved back. Marcus waved too, and then turned to look out the window. He saw the tarmac and other planes parked at gates. Fuel trucks moved back and forth. Ground crew waved wands to guide pilots. It felt like a small world all moving toward the sky. He thought about the kindness he had experienced here so far. Smiling faces, the polite voices. It had been a good trip so far. A few minutes later, the flight attendant walked down the aisle. She paused at Marcus's row. "Sir, I'm sorry, but that bag has to go under the plane," she said, pointing at his backpack. Marcus frowned in surprise. "Oh, why is that?" he asked gently. "It's too large for the overhead bin space," she explained. Marcus glanced at the bin, which still had empty space. He unzipped his backpack slightly to show its size. "It's my school bag," he said. "It fits fine." The attendant shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir. Please check it at the door." She gestured for him to wait until after landing. Marcus felt a flicker of worry. Did not want to lose his sketchbook or headphones. He got up and took his backpack down. He unzipped it and showed her again. "See? It's small." She did not relent. "Sir, please move it to cargo hold. That's airline policy." Marcus felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had read the airline's carry-on rules carefully before packing. His bag fit the size limits. He tried not to sound frustrated. "Can I measure it?" he asked. The attendant did not answer. She walked away to help another passenger. Marcus felt eyes on him now. People in neighboring seats watched as he held his bag. He pressed the overhead bin button and tidied his area. He took a deep breath. "It's okay," he told himself. "Just handle it." When the attendant returned a bit later, she motioned for him again. "Sir, you must check this bag," she said firmly. "Please step off the plane." Confusion washed over Marcus. He stood up, face calm but voice low. "I'm sorry, but I think there's a mistake," he said. "My bag fits by policy. I have my boarding pass. Can I talk to your supervisor?" The attendant frowned. She pressed her radio. A woman in a uniform approached. "Sir," she said to Marcus, "we've asked you to check this bag. You must go under the plane." Marcus explained his side again. He pulled a tape measure from his pocket. He carried one for his art class. He measured the bag. It was a few millimeters under the limit. He showed it. The uniformed woman shook her head without looking at the numbers. "Company policy," she said. "You must get off." Marcus felt a flush of embarrassment as he stepped into the aisle. He looked at the other passengers. Some avoided eye contact. Some stared. He recalled how his grandmother used to tell him, "Be calm, speak kindly, even when they are unfair." He tried to follow her advice. He nodded at the attendants and said, "Okay, I'll go." He used the handrail to step down onto the jet bridge. Once off the plane, he turned around expecting to see a gate agent where he could explain fully. Instead, he found himself alone in a quiet hallway. The plane had closed its doors and moved toward takeoff. Marcus felt the cabin lights disappear. The loudspeaker no longer blared. It was only the echo of his own footsteps. He stood still, backpack in hand. He felt small and stranded. A hot tear ran down his cheek, but he blinked it back. He did not want anyone to see him upset. He walked out onto the main terminal floor and looked around. The bright lights and colorful signs felt harsh now. He set his backpack on a bench and sat down slowly. His heart pounded. He pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. He found Dad's Skyward Air and held his breath. He tapped the number and brought the phone to his ear. "Hey, son," his father said, voice warm. "You okay?" The concern in his voice made Marcus's chest ache. He swallowed. "Dad," he said, voice quiet but steady. "They pulled me off the plane." He explained what happened, the demands, the measurements, the policy that did not make sense. His words rushed out. His father listened without interrupting. Each word Marcus spoke echoed in the empty hallway. His father's voice came back firm. "Stay right there," he said. "I'm coming." Then he added, "They can't treat." "You like that?" Marcus closed his eyes and let himself believe his father. He felt a wave of relief and gratitude. People passed by, carrying bags and coffee. Marcus watched them without really seeing. He thought of the unfairness he had felt, how easily policies could be used to single someone out. He felt lucky. His father could help, but he also felt sad that he needed such help. He checked the time. Only 10 minutes had passed since he was forced off. His phone buzzed again. It was his dad texting. "I've alerted the team. They're fixing this. Meet you at the gate as soon as I can." Marcus let out a shaky breath. He packed up his sketchbook and headphones. He stood and slung his backpack over his shoulder. He took one last look down the silent hallway and headed back toward the gate, feeling anxious but determined. In those few minutes, his morning had shifted from routine to tense. He had gone from excited traveler to confused and embarrassed teenager. Yet at the same time, he felt a spark of hope. His father cared enough to stop everything to help him. Thought Marcus walked on, ready to see what came next. Marcus felt his legs shake as he walked back toward the gate. Every step echoed in the empty hallway. He clutched his phone, watching the screen for his father's next message. Shadows from the overhead lights stretched across the floor. He felt exposed, like everyone could see his worry. But he remembered his grandmother's words. "Courage is quiet, comes in small steps." He kept walking. At the gate, a few passengers waited for the next flight. Some glanced at him as he entered. He spotted his father approaching near the counter, his suit jacket open and tie loosened. Marcus felt relief flood through him. He hurried forward. "Hey, champ," his father said, offering a firm hug. Marcus let himself lean in, his backpack pressed against his back. "I'm here now," David said softly. He patted his son's shoulder. "I'm so sorry this happened." Marcus pulled back and wiped his eyes. He nodded, voice catching. "Thank you for coming." He handed his phone to his father, showing the text exchange. David read it quickly, eyes narrowing when he saw the part about forced removal. He set the phone down. "Let's sort this," he said. He spoke quietly into his own phone. "Operations, I need an immediate update. Find my son and get him on the next flight." He tapped the counter and gained the attention of the gate agent, a young woman whose face looked uneasy. "Excuse me," he said, "this is my son. He was removed unfairly. I'd like him on the next available seat." The agent blinked. "Bennett, sir, I'm so sorry," she said. "We didn't know. I'll get you on the next flight." She pressed her headset. "Ground control, please confirm seat availability on flight 428. She looked to Marcus. "What seat do you prefer?" Marcus shrugged, still shaky. "Any seat," he said. "I just want to go home." The agent nodded and turned back to her screen. David stepped aside and wrapped an arm around his son. "You did the right thing by calling me," he said. "Never feel bad for standing up calmly." Marcus took a deep breath. "I felt scared," he said, "and embarrassed." He looked at his father. People were watching. Dave listened, nodding. He squeezed Marcus's shoulder. "I know," he said, "but you handled it with grace." Nearby, 2 uniformed security officers approached. Their posture was stiff. The taller one, Officer Diaz, spoke first. "Mr. Bennett, sir," he said, nodding at David. "We apologize for the confusion. There was a policy misunderstanding." David looked at him firmly but calmly. "My son followed your rules exactly," he said. "I want to know who made the call to remove him." Officer Diaz cleared his throat. "It was our misunderstanding of the carry-on size limit." "Not have been enforced that way," turned to Marcus. "Son, I'm sorry for the way you were treated." Marcus nodded, still quiet. The other officer, a woman named Officer Chen, stepped forward. "We regret the inconvenience. Please accept our apology." She held out a small envelope.
Nice.
"Is a voucher for your troubles. Covers priority boarding and a meal voucher." Marcus shook his head. "It's okay," he said softly. "I just want to get home." The officers exchanged a glance and stepped back. David guided Marcus to a gateside bench. "Why don't you sit?" he suggested. "I'll handle the details." He stood and spoke quietly with the gate agent. And the security officers? Marcus watched them talk, the hiss of their voices nearly drowned by the muffled hum of the terminal. He took out his sketchbook and began to draw again, nervously tracing a sketch of himself stepping off the plane. But his lines wobbled. He paused and set the book aside. He closed his eyes and breathed in and out, slow and steady, he pictured. The seat he'd sit in, the sunlight through the window, his mother waiting at the arrival gate. He imagined calm, confident smiles. A few minutes later, his father returned and sat beside him. "We have seats on flight 428, he said. "Boarding. In 20 minutes, you'll be in row 12. He handed Marcus a new boarding pass. Marcus's hands trembled as he took it. "Thank you," he said quietly. David smiled. "I'm proud of how you held your ground," he said, "and you stayed polite." Marcus forced a small smile. "I just wanted them to see the truth," he said, "that I wasn't breaking rules." His father nodded. You did, and now let's get you on that plane." He patted Marcus's knee and stood up. "Let's go check your bag in properly this time." Marcus lifted his backpack and followed. At the counter, the agent scanned his new pass. She smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry again," she said. "Your bag is fine. I've marked it priority. It'll be on board." She tapped a screen. "You're all set. At gate B3, which is just down that way." Marcus walked off to gate B3. He felt a mix of relief and residual embarrassment. People passed him with coffee cups and rolling suitcases, focused on his breathing. In his mind, he rehearsed how he would sit in his seat, buckle his belt, and look out the window without worry. He arrived at gate B3 and found a seat next to a young woman reading a travel magazine. He sat down and offered her a polite nod. She nodded back. A minute later, another passenger, a middle-aged man in a business suit, sat beside him. Managed a small smile. He felt the knock of his heart slow. His father found him again, clutching 2 bottles of water and 2 snack bars. "Thought you might be hungry," he said kindly, setting them on the small gate table. "Anything else you need?" Marcus shook his head. He reached for a snack bar. "Thanks, Dad." He unwrapped it and took a bite. He chewed thoughtfully. The sweetness grounded him. They sat together in quiet companionship. David checked his watch. "All right," he said softly. "Your flight should start boarding soon." He put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "How are you feeling?" Marcus took another bite, then replied, "Better." He met his father's gaze. "Thank you for coming." "I know you had a lot going on," David smiled. "You're my son," he said. "Nothing is more important." He looked around the gate area. "Once you're on the plane, I'll let you text me." Marcus nodded and checked his phone. It was nearly time. The gate agent stood and opened her mouth to speak. She tapped her headset and then said over the speaker, "Now boarding group 1 for flight 428, please have your boarding pass ready." Passengers began to stand. Marcus stood too, his backpack light on his back. He followed the line up the jet bridge. As he stepped onto the plane, he felt the cabin's warmth and softness again. He found seat 1 to see by the window. He set his backpack in the bin above and sat down, buckling his seatbelt. He looked back one time toward the jet bridge. He saw his father at the window, giving him a thumbs up. Marcus smiled and gave a small wave. Then he turned to face forward. He felt the familiar hum as the plane filled. The mother behind him strapped her toddler into the seat. The flight attendant welcomed everyone with a friendly voice. Marcus took a slow breath. He closed his eyes for a moment and pictured safe skies. In his mind, he stored the memory of his father's calm confidence. He remembered the officer's apologies and the agent's help. He felt proud that he had stood up for himself without anger. He opened his eyes and stared out at the runway. The engines roared to life. He braced himself as they began to taxi. The plane lifted smoothly into the clear sky. Marcus watched the ground fall away. He flexed his fingers around the sketchbook in his lap. He thought of the next part of his trip home, the walk through the arrivals hall, the hug from his mother, a hot cup of tea in the living room. He felt hopeful. He felt seen. The hum of the engines was steady now. Marcus leaned back and closed his eyes, feeling grateful for a second chance on this morning flight. His journey continued, but he knew he had turned a difficult moment into a story of quiet strength. And somewhere beyond those clouds, a father smiled, knowing his son had found his voice. The engines hummed steadily as Marcus settled into his seat. He pulled his sketchbook onto his lap and opened it to a blank page. His hand hovered over the paper. He thought about the moments before takeoff, how alone and confused he had felt in the hallway, and then how safe he felt when his father arrived. He drew a small airplane cutting through clouds, then added a tiny figure waving from the window. The image felt right, like a sign of hope. Behind him, the flight attendant made her final checks. Marcus watched her kind eyes and remembered the way she had tried to help later on. He closed his sketchbook and tapped the window. The ground slipped away as the plane climbed higher.
Ow!
Through the glass, the tarmac looked small and distant. Marcus felt a soft excitement. He was heading home, and he was heading there with new strength inside him. Above the clouds, the flight smoothed out. Marcus leaned back and let the gentle sway rock him. He took out his phone and texted his mother, "Safe. Almost home." Soon, a reply came. "Can't wait to hug you, sweet boy." His heart warmed. He typed back, "Love you, Mom." He put his phone away and thought about how this day had changed. A simple trip home had become a test of right and wrong, and he had passed with grace. Meanwhile, down in the airline's operations center, David Bennett sat at a glass desk surrounded by screens. One screen showed the flight tracker. Flight 428 was now high above the clouds. David watched his son's progress and felt relief. On another screen, a live feed of security logs and messages scrolled by. He had already spoken with the head of airport operations and the head of security. They had promised a full review. David leaned back in his chair. He felt the weight of his roles, as a father and as an airline owner. He thought of all the people who work for Skyward Air. He wanted them to know that fairness and respect must guide every decision. He tapped a few keys and sent a message to all senior managers. We must treat every guest with dignity, no exceptions. Then he closed his eyes and breathed in and out, steadying himself. In the terminal below, news of what had happened to Marcus spread quickly. A passenger on the first flight had captured video on his phone. The moment Marcus stepped onto the bridge, the look of confusion on his face, the attendants pressing him to leave. The video cut to Marcus alone in the hallway, phone to his ear. The clip was short but powerful. It flashed across social media in minutes. People wrote comments under the video. Some praised Marcus for staying calm. Some blamed the airline staff for acting too quickly. Some shared stories of their own bad experiences. The airport felt a sudden buzz. Reporters gathered near the gates. A local news crew arrived, setting up a camera and lights. The terminal, usually calm in mid-afternoon, now hummed with cameras and questions. Back on Flight 428, Marcus felt the plane begin its descent. He heard the climb and then the shift as the engine slowed. He buckled in. He glanced at the person. Beside him, a woman in a business suit reading a report. He forced a small, polite smile. She looked up and nodded. Marcus felt his heart loosen. Simple, small gestures reminded him he was not alone. David Bennett watched the media feed on his office monitor. He saw the news anchor standing by the gate, telling viewers, Skyward Air has launched an internal probe after a 17-year-old passenger was removed from a flight this morning. The passenger's father, who owns the airline, intervened and secured a seat on the next plane. David saw his own face in a small window, his calm but firm words as he apologized at the gate. He sat up straight and typed a statement to the press. Skyward Air apologizes for the treatment of any guest who feels harmed by our policies. We are reviewing this incident and will adjust our procedures to prevent a repeat. We value every passenger. He hit send. Almost immediately, his words appeared on news websites and social media feeds. Comments poured in, some praising the quick action, some demanding more detail. David knew this was just a start. He would need to follow through. Below, the terminal staff gathered for an impromptu meeting. The head of airport security officer Diaz stood at the front. He looked weary but determined. We messed up, he said. Used poor judgment. We will fix this. Around him, the security team nodded. The gate agents joined them. A trainer from the airline's human resources department stepped forward with new training materials on bias and customer care. When Flight 428 landed, Marcus disembarked calmly. He walked down the jet bridge with his sketchbook under his arm. He saw security officers waiting, but this time, they stood aside respectfully. He felt the air of apology in their faces. He reached the gate area and saw his mother running toward him. She wrapped him in a big hug. He felt tears come again, but these were tears of relief. Oh, honey, she whispered. His father joined them a moment later, carrying a small gift box. Marcus and his mother looked at him. He handed it to Marcus. Inside was a new set of high-quality colored pencils. For your art, David said. Smiling, because your voice matters, and your art matters too. Marcus's eyes lit up. He squeezed pencils out of the box and smiled at his father. They walked together through the arrivals hall. Marcus's mother led the way, and David walked beside Marcus's arm around his shoulders. They passed by the baggage claim and the sliding doors to the parking lot. Marcus felt the cool air from outside brush his face, took a deep breath. In the car, Marcus settled into the back seat between his parents. They drove through familiar streets lined with trees and small shops. Radio played soft music. Marcus stared out the window, watching lights on houses and street lamps. His mother reached back and held his hand. He felt safe. At home, Marcus sat at his desk and arranged his new colored pencils. He opened his sketchbook and began a fresh page. He drew the scene at the gate, the moment of apology, the mood of goodwill that replaced tension. He sketched the three of them together, a family standing strong. When he finished, he wrote beneath it, "Kindness can grow from hard times." That night after dinner, the family gathered in the living room. David brought up a news article on his tablet. It showed the video of Marcus and the text of his public apology and the company statement. He read aloud a line from a comment. "Every airline should learn from Skyward Air's mistake and Marcus's courage." Marcus felt a swell of pride. His mother smiled and said, "You did that, Marcus." He nodded, feeling the truth. He thought of the fear and the embarrassment, but also of his grandmother's words and his father's quiet strength. He realized that speaking up, even in a soft voice, could ripple out and make real change. That night, as Marcus lay in bed, he thought back over the day. A morning of travel had turned into a lesson he would never forget. He drifted to sleep, feeling grateful for his family, for his own calm, and for the chance to help an entire airline learn to treat its passengers better. In his dreams, he flew freely above the clouds, unburdened and strong. The next morning, the airport felt different. Word of what happened to Marcus had spread overnight. Skyward Air's leaders gathered early in a bright conference room overlooking the runway. David Bennett sat at the head of the table. He looked at each person, his operations chief, the head of customer service, and the director of security. He spoke quietly but firmly. "We owe Marcus a full repair of this mistake. Our policy must protect every traveler, no matter their age, race, or background." The operations chief cleared his throat. "Sir, we've already reviewed the incident. The staff misread the carry-on policy. They thought his bag was too large, but it fit exactly within our limits." He tapped a finger on his tablet. "We will correct their understanding immediately." David nodded. "Good. Next, I want a plan to retrain every crew member on proper policy and on treating guests with respect. I don't want any passenger to feel singled out ever again." He paused. "And I want a full review of how we handle disputes mid-flight. We should have a clear, calm procedure, so young travelers like Marcus never face that humiliation." Director of Security spoke up. "We will hold mandatory workshops on bias awareness. We'll bring in an outside consultant to run simulations. Need our officers to recognize how unconscious bias can shape decisions." She slid a sheet of paper across the table. "Here's a draft schedule." Across the table, the head of customer service added, "We should also send a personal apology letter to Marcus and to any guest who felt harmed, and offer them a voucher for free future travel." She looked at David. "That shows we stand behind our values." David leaned forward. "I want the letter to come from me personally. Let's offer him enrollment in our junior pilot youth program. He's a young man with a future. I want Skyward Air to stand behind him." The room fell silent as the team nodded in agreement. With the plan set, the group rose and left the conference room. David stayed behind for a moment, staring out at the planes taxiing below. He felt the weight of his words. He had the power to shape policies for hundreds of thousands of travelers each day. He breathed deeply, feeling both responsibility and pride. Back at the terminal, a small Skyward Air task force met with the airport's management. They brought new posters, showing the carry-on size limits in clear pictures. They placed tape on the jet bridge floor marking where bags must fit. They updated the airline's app to include an easy guide on measuring luggage. At each gate, they added a small sit-down area where passengers could resolve questions before boarding. A Skyward Air trainer walked through the terminal in a bright vest that said Customer Care Team. She approached gate agents and flight attendants, handing out quick reference cards. "The goal," she said, "is kindness plus clarity. We measure luggage with respect. We speak with warmth." Some attendants practiced the new script. "I'm sorry for the confusion. Let me check that bag for you in a moment, or guide you to our measuring device." Meanwhile, news crews returned to the gate where Marcus had been removed the day before. A reporter smiled at the camera. "Skyward Air has launched new training for its staff after the incident with teenager Marcus Bennett," she said. Behind, her travelers glanced at the camera as they walked by. The station cut to a clip of David Bennett's apology at the gate. Viewers saw his calm face and heard his words, "We regret the harm done."
Elsewhere.
Local community leaders met with Skyward Air's Diversity Council. They spoke about how everyone must feel safe in public spaces, including airports. A pastor spoke up. A teenager should never be forced off a plane for no reason. This could happen to anyone. Council members listened, took notes, and promised to host a public forum to discuss fairness in travel. In the days that followed, Marcus's story remained in the news. But as the airline's actions took hold, the tone changed. Headlines shifted from outrage to praise. Skyward Air turns mistake into opportunity. CEO father leads change after son's incident. New policies aim to protect young travelers. Marcus watched these stories on his phone, sitting at the kitchen table with his mother. He tapped the screen. "Look, Mom, people are saying good things now." She smiled and ruffled his hair. "See how your courage made a big difference?" At school, classmates talked about the event. Some told Marcus they felt proud of him. Others admitted they had been shocked to hear what happened. Even teachers discussed the incident, using it to teach lessons on fairness and speaking up. Marcus felt a mixture of embarrassment and pride. He realized that sometimes hard moments can become powerful lessons for everyone. Back at work, David Bennett received a message from his board of directors. They applauded his leadership and asked for a quarterly report on the new training program's progress. He found himself writing a memo late one evening. "Our mission is to connect the world. Now, to do that, we must first trust the world in return." He signed his name and sent it off. In the operations center, the screens now showed a new dashboard. It tracked staff completion of bias training, the number of guest feedback forms mentioning positive service, and the average time to resolve carry-on questions. A small green indicator lit up for customer satisfaction. It read 92%, higher than ever before. The team smiled when they saw it. They knew these numbers meant real smiles on real flights. One afternoon, David surprised Marcus by inviting him to visit a Skyward Air training session. They entered a simulation room where staff role-played passenger interactions. An instructor played the part of a traveler with an oversized bag. Crew members practiced using a measuring device and speaking kindly. When they finished, Marcus spoke up. "That's exactly how it should have felt for me," he said. The trainees listened, nodding, and thanked him for his feedback. David watched his son speak with confidence. He felt proud of Marcus's calm voice and clear words. After the session, they walked through a quiet hallway lined with photos of Skyward Air's history. Marcus pointed to a black and white picture of the very first aircraft. "Imagine flying that," he said with a grin. David smiled back. He knew his son had the heart of a storyteller and a pilot's curiosity. Soon the airline added a section on its website called Our Promise. It described the changes' clearer policies, better training, and a commitment to respect. It featured Marcus's sketch of the family at the gate with the words "kindness can grow from hard times" beneath it. Visitors saw the sketch and read a short note from Marcus. "Thank you for listening. We can all learn to be kinder." As the weeks passed, Skyward Air flights ran smoothly. Passengers no longer faced confusion over carry-on bags. Staff greeted travelers with warmth. Security officers held quick chats to answer questions instead of making calls. And whenever a young traveler looked uncertain, an attendant knelt down, showed the policy chart, offered a reassuring smile. One morning, David walked into his office to find a note on his desk. It was from a gate agent at the very terminal. Where Marcus had been removed, she wrote, "Thank you for supporting us through this change. We feel more confident helping guests." David folded the note carefully and placed it in his drawer. He felt a quiet satisfaction that real people felt valued. That evening, David and Marcus had dinner together at home. Marcus recounted the training he had joined and how he saw staff putting kindness into practice. David listened and toasted with his glass of lemonade. "To you, Marcus, for teaching us all a lesson." Marcus smiled shyly. He realized that the hardest moments can become the moments that shape us strongest. Later, as Marcus drew another picture, this one of a flight attendant kneeling to explain a policy to a smiling traveler he thought about. the long road from shame to change. He thought about how his small act of calm speaking had touched people across an entire company, and he felt certain that kindness, once set in motion, can become a force that carries us all forward. Marcus stretched out on his bed that night, the soft glow of his bedside lamp casting gentle shadows on the wall. The day had been full: meetings, training sessions, and a warm dinner with his family. He felt a tired happiness, like after a long walk in the sun. He closed his eyes and thought about everything that had changed since that morning on the jet bridge. His heart felt full of gratitude and new ideas. The next morning, Marcus woke to the sound of birds singing outside his window. He sat up slowly, remembering the trip home. He picked up his sketchbook from the desk and flipped to the last drawing. He had made the image of a flight attendant kneeling to explain a policy to a young traveler. Both smiling, he tapped his pencil to the paper and added a few details. Bright eyes, soft gestures, a sense of calm. Then he paused, thinking how art could help people understand each other. After breakfast, Marcus went downstairs to find his father in the home office reading reports. David Bennett looked up and smiled when he saw Marcus. He set aside his papers. "Ready for today?" he asked. Marcus nodded. He felt a spark of excitement. Today, he would join his father in another part of the airline's work visiting. The design team that created those new carry-on measuring stations. They drove together to a skyward air hangar on the edge of the airport grounds. The sun shone bright, and the air smelled of fuel and fresh paint. Inside, a small group of engineers and designers gathered around a prototype station. It was sleek and simple. A white metal frame with clear markings for size, a small screen explaining policy, and a padded shelf at the right height. The lead designer, Alina, greeted them with a friendly wave. "We wanted to make something intuitive," Alina said. "When you place your bag here, you see in seconds if it fits. We added the video loop to show staff how to respond kindly." She tapped the screen, and it showed a short animation of the attendant offering to help. Marcus watched, fascinated. He realized how design could shape behavior. He leaned over the station and ran his hand along the smooth surface. His father nodded in approval. "This will help everyone," David said. "Thank you for your work." He looked at Marcus. "What do you think?" Marcus smiled. "It's perfect," he said. "It feels welcoming, not like a cage. People will understand." Alina beamed. "We'll roll this out to all gates next month." After the tour, they walked outside to the tarmac. A small skyward airplane sat waiting. Marcus watched as ground crew secured luggage and gave nods to the pilot. He thought about the many journeys this plane would carry: families, students, travelers of all kinds. He felt proud that he had helped make the path smoother for someone else like him. Back home, Marcus attended his virtual art class, shared his new sketches, and described the measuring station design. His classmates asked questions. "Why did you draw it that way? How did it make you feel?" Marcus spoke with confidence, explaining how a small device could reflect kindness and clarity. His teacher praised the work and encouraged him to enter an art contest. Marcus felt inspired to keep creating. That afternoon, his mother called from the airport. "They asked me to speak at a community event," she said. She sounded excited. "They want parents and teens to talk about travel experiences." Marcus's ears perked up. "I'll join you," he said. "I'd like to share what happened." She laughed softly. "I knew you would." That evening at the local community center, a small crowd gathered. A banner read, "Safe skies for all. Teens speak up." On stage sat Marcus and his mother. Parents, teachers, and even some airline staff filled the chairs. The mayor introduced them. Marcus's heart beat fast as he took the microphone. He looked at the faces before him, some curious, some welcoming. He took a deep breath and began. He told the story simply: how he was asked to leave a flight, how he felt, and how his father helped him. He spoke about the training and the measuring stations. He showed slides of his drawings. His voice was steady and clear. He looked at his mother, who nodded encouragingly. He shared his hope that every traveler, no matter their background, could feel respected. When he finished, the audience applauded. Warmly, A few teens in the front row raised their hands. One asked, "What should we do if we face unfair treatment?" Marcus thought for a moment. "Stay calm," he said. "Speak kindly, tell the truth, and don't be afraid to call for help. Your voice matters." The room fell silent, then filled with nods and more applause. Walking home, Marcus felt a quiet pride. He realized his story could help others find courage. His mother squeezed his hand. "You were amazing," she said. Marcus smiled shyly, just telling the truth. That night he wrote in his journal, "Today I saw how one voice can inspire change. I will keep drawing, speaking up, and helping others feel seen." He closed his journal and drifted to sleep. Days turned into weeks. Skyward Air's changes took hold. Passengers chatted about the clear stations. Gate agents smiled more. Security officers greeted travelers by name when they knew it. The airline's new motto, "Respect above all," appeared on emails and posters. Marcus saw it in the airport and felt a glow of pride. At school, Marcus's art teacher hung his sketch of the measuring station near the classroom door. Other students admired it. A friend tapped him on the shoulder. "Your art really made me think." Marcus beamed. He knew his work had meaning. On the morning of Marcus's birthday, his father surprised him with a visit to the Skyward Air flight simulator hangar. Marcus climbed into the cockpit of a realistic simulator. He adjusted the controls, guided the plane through takeoff and landing under the watchful eye of a pilot instructor. His father watched on a screen, proud. After the flight, the instructor turned to Marcus. "You handled it well." Marcus grinned, feeling that his calm strength had grown far beyond the morning he was forced off a plane. That evening, the family gathered for cake. Marcus closed his eyes and made a wish. He blew out the candles, and everyone cheered. Cut the cake, he realized his wish had already come true. He wished for fairness, kindness, and creativity, and he had helped bring it to hundreds of travelers. Later that night, Marcus sat by his window and looked at the stars. He thought of all the journeys happening right then. Planes crossing oceans, people visiting loved ones, children starting new adventures. He imagined each traveler feeling welcome and safe. He thought of his pencil drawing kindness into the world and his voice opening doors. He whispered to the night, "May every journey be filled with respect and care." Then he closed his eyes and felt at peace. He knew the story he started would continue on every flight and every terminal. With every traveler who found their voice, he dreamt of the sky, wide and free, where every person belonged.